Hey folks, welcome to the Mediocre Cover Band Guitar Guy. I know I did a video earlier, but as I was getting cleaned up and getting settled away for the evening and grabbing a cup of tea, no beers tonight, that'll be tomorrow night, I said I'd have a killer cup of tea instead. And something occurred to me, and all the time I've spent doing these videos and talking about cover bands and things you can do when you're in a cover band and giving advice, one thing I never talked about was being in a band in general with your significant other. Um, for anybody who's not familiar, who's watched this channel, who's just come on board lately, I play in a four-piece covers band called the Urban Legends, and my significant other is the singer. And we've been doing that now since, well, 2012. And we were in a band before that as well, together. That's how we actually met, through music. Um, and we've been doing it pretty much ever since, and exclusively. She, I think, might have sang with some friends of hers a couple times. She did a gig in Gander with them and shared the stage with them here and there, as we'd seen them play a few times. And then I did the whole Alan Jackson experience there a few weeks ago. But we've been pretty exclusively doing music together for that amount of time, since 2012. And before that, like I said, we weren't really a couple when we first started playing together. So anyway, there's a lot of things you need to consider when you're going to go and play in a band with your significant other, okay? Um, a lot of things. So I'm going to just talk about a couple of things that we've experienced over the last little bit as a couple, um, that you need to have a strong relationship to get through before you can have a strong musical relationship. For instance, when we rehearse, sometimes if something's not going right and we sort of dig in on something, um, whether it's, for argument's sake, I think a song's not working, or she thinks a song's not working, or she thinks it is working and I don't, or vice versa. With other people in bands, when the rehearsal's over, you pack up and you get away from each other, and there's a cool down period. We rehearse in this room, and not that it mattered, because we rehearsed at a rehearsal space before and it was the same thing. We'd drive home and get home and have a disagreement about it. But everybody else goes home, and if it's Tammy and I who have the disagreement, it spills over after everybody's gone. And there are nights after rehearsal we've gone to bed a little bit angry or annoyed, or just not gone to bed till very late. And because Tammy likes to hammer things out, and she doesn't want to go to bed angry, and she doesn't believe in letting things fester. She wants to talk about it, get it out in the open, and get it resolved and move on. I like to push things down, and just push it down to the point where you're thinking about ways to get back at her. Like, for instance, if you're playing in a small club and people are dancing close to the stage and you happen to pass some gas and it really isn't very flattering and it probably smells like spicy sausages or something, and people are looking at you, and you can point to the female lead singer because no one's really expecting her, you know, to fire off an ill rip, right? So she likes to get things resolved, and I guess that makes sense, instead of doing petty little things like that. But like I said, it's an argument that can happen, um, and you got to realize you're arguing with the person you live with, right? The person you're sharing your life with, the person you're raising kids together with. We've got a blended family with a lot of kids. It's like a sitcom or something, or a reality show. It was at its peak when everybody was living at home. We had 6 kids here. But anyway, we're like the fucking Brady Bunch. I keep saying I'm the Al Bundy from Married with Children of cover bands. But the other thing about it is that there are things that happen when you're playing gigs too. Like, well, going back to rehearsal, like song selection sometimes. I tend to think that because I've been doing this longer than anybody else in the band, I know more. Not always the case. But once again, you got to find that ground to resolve it. before you can move on, or it's just going to fester in your relationship. And that's the rehearsal part of it. So we might disagree on song selection. We might not agree on the way something's working. I might have figured out a song, and if it's a riff heavy tune that she's singing over, she might stop and go, okay, like I'm singing this note, and what you're playing is not matching. You need to find this note, or I'll learn something and I'll spend all this time on it, and then it's not really in her range. It's too low, and it's got a lot of open stuff in it, and then you're rearranging it, and that, kind of sort of stuff. But when you're doing it kind of with another person, you walk away from it after a while and you calm down. Not so much when you're with your partner. And it doesn't matter where you're rehearsing. Like I said, you could have a long car ride home, and that's happened. The other thing is when you're playing live, man, it's brutal. I don't know what in the fuck is wrong with guys. Excuse me. Well, no, I say fuck a lot on this channel, don't I? But I don't know what the fuck is wrong with guys. They think because a woman's on stage, female, that there must be like she's meant for me, she's mine. She'll go home with me, that sort of thing. They don't realize that they're there for the same reason that the guys are there, And I'm just using this. I'm not trying to offend people and exclude people. I'm going by our own experiences. But they have that notion that, okay, well, I can bring this person home and it'll be really easy. They don't think that these are musicians and blah 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 in all circles, And that really is hard when you have to watch it, especially with somebody who's singing because they're out front. And things happen. Like we played a gig over in Carbonear, and a guy wanted her to dance while she was singing a slow song. So he expected her to come out and like, we're not lip syncing here or doing karaoke, right? So she turned it down and said, no, like, I'm singing, I can't leave the stage to go dance. And hopefully, she did want to anyway. And he decided to say, well, you should because I'm hung like a horse. So we all know what that means. And kept proceeding to talk about it and talk about it. And as we got into the song, he decided to prove it. And he proved it. So, not that I'm a great looking guy, folks, or anything like that. We all know I'm not. But like this guy, he was really short, shaped awkwardly, almost like Eugene Lovitz, whatever his name is, the guy from Saturday Night Live. Remember he had the cartoon The Critic? Well, dude was shaped like him. So I guess that was God's way of saying, I'm sorry. I'm going to give you like a fucking penis that's about as big as a baby's leg, right? So dude decides to show us, luckily the bouncer threw him out. Um, we've had guys come up and grab her by the hands and try to drag her off stage between sets, that. And I got to keep an air of professionalism about it and let the people in the bar do their jobs and stay out of it. Just because you don't want to have that reputation of, well, you can't hire that band because their guitar player is a hothead and his missus is singing, and if you look at it the wrong way, he's going to punch your lights out. I mean, I'd love to bring him home and bury him in the backyard and have a new fucking flower garden every time shit happens, Last gig we played at Tolls, a guy came up and said to her, you're coming home with me, right? And she's like, well, no, I'm with him. That's my partner. And he looked at me and realized I was a foot and a half taller and 100 pounds heavier and bolted out the fucking door. So, it doesn't happen as much for her on my end. I had a lady come up and ask me if I was on Tinder, and I had, well, I didn't. She had an incident in the washroom where a lady came up and asked her if I was single. That's about the extent of it. I guess when you're well over 6 feet tall and 240, 50 pounds, people tend to look at you as probably being like kind of mountainish or something. I don't know. But I don't usually get too much trouble. But for me, on the other end of it, and there's other things that have happened, and I'm not going to get into all of them because I could probably sit down and do a full hour-long video on shit like that. But you got to keep a really cool head and let that prevail. Also, when you're having bad gigs and things are going wrong, you can't take it out on each other. Um, you got to be encouraging almost. So if you need to be that way with your bandmates in general anyway. Everybody has a bad moment on stage, or you got a night when you're just not feeling it, or you got something going at home, and you got to roll with that. And it's the same thing when you're in the relationship. If something's not going right, you can't argue about it. If something happened, you can't argue about it. Um, you just got to let it go. Sometimes, you have to really compartmentalize a lot of things and say to yourself at the end of the day, was that really worth getting into an argument over? If you value a relationship, and I value my relationship more than the music. Um, you know, it's a thing, and then you're on the road with this person, so you're 20 hours of fucking around for 4 hours of fun, right? When you're in a covers band, because you're playing 3 hours, and then you got your two 30-minute breaks, right? Um, you got all that downtime and things. Usually, Tammy and I, what we'll do for somewhere different, we'll suss out somewhere to go, something to do, go get something to eat, go for a coffee, beat around downtown somewhere, and find something to sort of take your mind off of the waiting to do the gig. Some places you do sound check in the afternoon. We've played places where you do sound check at like 9:30 at night when you're going on at 11. But you're traveling with that person, which means you're going to be spending all that time with that person as well. Some guys and some women play in bands where they use the out of town gigs, the away gigs, to get away from their partners. Um, and I'm going to be honest, I kind of, when I did the whole Alan Jackson thing, I did struggle with that a little bit. Um, not only being out of my comfort zone and playing like country music and playing with different musicians and things like that, but just being away. Once upon a time, I would have been like, oh, great, I'm getting a break. But I kind of didn't. I don't know. I guess I'm getting older and things are a lot different. You got grandkids in the mix now, and life is just different. And we've slowed down a lot, especially since COVID, like everybody else. But I found that a bit rough too. But in the case of when it was new, you're traveling with that person. If something happens, it could be a 4 hour car ride home. That's pure agony for both of you, not just one of you, for both of you. You really got to have that. There's going to be disagreements over gigs, like what gigs you should take. Sometimes I'm gung ho. We need to do this gig, and I guess Tammy has a bit more of a. She's really good at sort of thinking ahead, and saying and coming back and saying can't do this gig because we're going to come back with nothing. We're going to be out money, out time, out all that work. And some people are going to watch this as they always do and go, it's not always about money. But you know what? Yeah, when you're traveling, it kind of is, right? You don't want to come back owing people money. But anyhow, there's that too, and that can cause a bit of trouble sometimes. And you got to work it out, and that's it. So at the end of the day, you really have to say to yourself, is it worth being in a relationship and being in a band together? Like, should we separate and be whatever? But I'm going to be honest, I can't really imagine being in a situation where I'm not playing music with the people I'm playing music with right now. I mean, I've been playing music with Alex for, it'll be a decade this November. Perry was actually an original member of the Urban Legends. He left for a little while and came back. And like I said, I've been almost 15 years doing this with Tammy, and I don't think I'd want to do it with another singer ever, in anything that I've done. And I guess that speaks volumes for the both of us and being able to keep a relationship and keep a band afloat. And that's what it's been about for the last, I guess, 12, 13 years of the Urban Legends, right? So, anyway, that's just my thoughts, and those are some things if you're going to start a band with your significant other, some things you need to think about. There are going to be moments. Think about what happens in the bars when you're in there, folks. Think about what happens in rehearsals, and then think about this is the person that I'm going upstairs and sharing a bed with that night, right? And waking up tomorrow and having breakfast and coming home to, and all those things. Um, like I said, for me, the relationship outweighs the music. It's not even a competition. It's not even close. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, folks, thank you once again for the support. If you can give the channel a like, I'd appreciate it. I know this video, it wasn't very guitar oriented, but that's it. All right, cheers.